Oh, hello there. I think possibly you can all hear me because it's RailNatter time. Oh my goodness. Let's just pin the live thing. Pin. There we go. Pinned. Oh, can everyone hear me? Are you getting reasonable sound quality coming through? Just slide that over here. And oh gosh, my desk is an absolute shambles at this point. As is the room around me. I've just exploded everywhere. There's just junk all over the place. It's been one of those months. How is everyone? Are you all well? Yeah, a bit of a change in the schedule, as some of you might have worked out. Good. Hello, everyone. Yes, so this is a slight change in that we're going to be talking about climate change, a bit of a COP26 theme, although this was supposed to be in 2 episodes' time, hence the Class 88. And we were going to be talking about buffer stops, but for obvious reasons, I think, as will become clear in the news for anyone out of the loop, we will not be talking about buffer stops and crashing trains as a theme this episode. So, let's get started, shall we? Yes, let's do this thing. So, first of all, the usual, let's get the COVID stats up. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. So we have, what is there to actually look at this time round? So we've got, let's just do this. So we've got, to be honest, the story is, I mean, okay, cycling is pitched a bit, but it's probably just because there's been some unseasonably unpleasant weather. It's been raining a lot. I don't know. It was quite nice last winter, maybe that sort of thing. But cycling and driving, roads and cycling are basically as they were pre-COVID, right? Buses again. There's this sort of, you can see the rolling average in the tread. So this rolling sort of shape of the buses. I'm a bit worried about that because bus usage. Buses are a critical part of everyone doing their, bus usage is critical for us kind of reducing our carbon emissions, our greenhouse gas emissions. So for bus usage to be weaving and waning is not good news. And then rail. Well, rail is just being weird. Rail is just sort of sitting almost to the point of like, I think we've reached the asymptote, actually. Because it seems to be bouncing along at around the 70%, so around sort of 70%, and actually it's kind of been dropping down to 60% even, which is obviously not ideal. Yeah, it's kind of bouncing between these. You can see here that this is dropping to 60, but never trust this. It generally bounces up about. You can see that it's kind of fairly flat. It looks like we've kind of reached a bit of a point of kind of steadying. Let's have a look at the next slide where you can sort of see things a bit more clearly. Yeah, you can see we're kind of bumping along a bit here. Not so great. Massive lack of bus drivers in Gloucestershire, says Tim. Oh, thanks, Tim Ballon. What are the blue dots below the blue line? Asks Matt Reed. Good question. These are the DFT predicted numbers. So they always they get the data a week. Rail's a week behind because we have dreadful data management, and also the way that we collect ticket data is a bit messy. So we get a prediction that's then updated after the fact based on who's actually travelled. And generally the dotted line, the predicted numbers, undercount. And the actual number is a bit higher. But I include the dotted numbers just for curiosity for people, really. But you can sort of see, I don't always copy and paste them, but you can sort of see what's going on there. Tom's asking if the reduction in commuters explain the rail figures. Yeah, Tom, sorry, this has been something you might have missed. We've been talking about this in kind of successive episodes. It's certainly the case that that a reduction in commuters has more people working from home, which is generally the market in and around London at least, is accounting for a reduction in the number of the core. In fact, the number of London travellers is lower than it. It's pretty low, and it's lower than it's apparent here, and it's been made up for by the increase in long distance travellers. So there's overall long distance travellers there are more of them than there were this time, kind of pre-COVID. So yeah, lots of things at play, but we're about to talk about one of the factors that's at play because I have been crunching numbers thanks to Tom Cairns of Real Time Trains fame. Because I've been doing some data crunching, data. What's the variance in normal years? James P. It's a good question. Yes. So, You'd expect to see a bit of wibble. So you generally expect to see the wibble. I don't have this level of resolution, so I can't directly compare, but you'd expect to see this sort of cyclical noise because it's essentially, this is the fact that weekends, it's probably the fact that the weekend is offset. So this is based on the same time in pre-COVID, the same date in pre-COVID times, but that, weekends and weekdays are kind of offset. So you'll see this sort of cyclical alteration, sort of that shape. And indeed, cycling is quite weather dependent, so it's probably impacted by kind of good or bad weather, which is obviously variant each year. As to what you'd expect the overall trend to be, you'd expect to be probably seeing a general increase, a kind of a steady increasing overall, certainly for rail through the year. So maybe an increase up to, every what's the annual increase? It's multiple percentage points, 6 to 8% even of ridership increase year on year. So you'd expect to sort of see kind of a general trend of increasing through the year. Yes. So, where do e-scooters fit on this image? They don't. The e-scooters don't fit in this image. There's no really good e-scooter data, to be honest. It'd be nice to have a look at it. This data is not available for 2019 and previous years. No, this resolution here is just not available, which is a shame, really, because it'd be very interesting to look at it. I hope they continue the data set forever because it's interesting to look at ridership on a daily basis. I'd quite like them to break it down by train operating company. But there we are. Oh, people are saying I look tired. You're not incorrect. I'm quite tired. It's only because of work. It's nothing to do with Glinner doing a defamation on me, or Walmart doing a defamation on me. Walmart's is inconsequential. Glinner's pretty horrific, but yeah. Anyway, none of you need to worry about that. So, data. Yes, I was teasing you about data. So the data is, well, it's okay. If I unfilter this, you'll see. Wait a minute. Let me just unfilter this. There's some data here. This is for each of the train operating company kind of groups. And what I've got two things. I've got train count, so the number of trains per day, and I've got service miles, which is actually a measure of how many miles the services are all scheduled to do each day. And it's for every Wednesday that we pick this up, actually, which is sensible because it's midweek, not necessarily just because it's RailNatter day. And then I've got a percentage of those figures versus the peak. So versus the maximum, so the high level of the timetable pre-COVID. So let's just hide all that. So what I've done here is I've filtered. I know the text is very small, folks, particularly if you're looking on a mobile. But so what I've got here is the percentage figure. So this shows the lowest percentages of the different operators. So let's zoom in so we get a bit of a better view, shall we? Because this will help us to see what's going on. So so you get to see for each of the operators their low point during COVID. So TFW Wales went down to 40%, Cal Sleeper down to 30%, 37% for LNER, 30% for Hull Trains. Actually, Hull Trains just finished everything. They drew a line under it for a while, didn't they? Island Line actually is unaffected. That's other non-COVID reasons why it's a 0% there. Heathrow Express 30%, 50% Greater Anglia, 40% West Midlands, 50% Overground. Everything went down to kind of 40%, some 50%. Southwestern Railway went down to 34%. It's quite remarkable. Transpennine Express went down to 30%. Look at that. Whereas TfL Rail just didn't really drop much at all. Went down to 62%. Anyway, so what we've got there, so those are the lowest figures through COVID, right? Transport for Wales Talk is ADA. So these codes, these are the accepted codes in the system. They're just a hanger-on from when the system was created, and you can see that VT for West Coast, LE for Greater Anglia. Some of them don't make any sense at all, but those are the codes. It's worth just kind of popping them there. Anyway, so if I zoom out a bit more there, and then I'm going to scroll. Where's that here? So I've got a nice big scroll bar. I'm going to scroll in here. I don't know why these are going grey. Don't worry about my. It's just basically Excel throwing a wobbly. Don't worry about that. You can see here all the nice greens for 100% of maximum level. Actually, you can see the Cal Sleeper. This is because they hadn't changed the timetable, I presume, where they were running lower, and then they reach a peak. When did they reach a peak? 0%. They seem to. I don't know what happened. So this is a bit weird. They ran more trains on this. Basically, things are going a bit weird for Cal Sleeper. So there's some artifacting, and some of these values need to be kind of like kind of a bit more attention paid to it. But if you could scroll along, you can. So this is the start of. Sorry, this is May. This is actually May 19. So you can see going through May 19. TfL, it's 62%, by the way, because they hadn't enacted their new timetable, so they reach a peak in a bit. So lovely, lovely, lovely. And then, so we get to the start. So we get to 2020. Don't worry about that because it's Hogmanay, so everything's to hell. And then, actually, it's interesting, isn't it? Because this 34% is giving. This is why I need to probably delete some of these. Actually, maybe I should just do that now. Yeah, maybe I will do that right now because that'll help my numbers. There, delete this. Just delete that outright. There we go. That's a bit better, isn't it? That gives me a clearer picture. Anyway, so so you can see here lots of lovely greens at the start of the year, start of 2020. There, greens, many greens. East Midlands, not so much, but anyway, and then reds. Some seriously spectacular reds because COVID happened, didn't it? And then all of a sudden, all the services just got reduced massively. So there's this emergency timetable and all these reds. You can see the Gatwick Express and Hull trains there, really very dark red. Lots of reds and oranges, and then some greens start appearing. Actually, interestingly, you can see Grand Central ran their full service again when they relaunched in September of 2020. And then there's sort of more reds again towards the end of the start of 2021 when everything had gone to hell again, if you remember. And then kind of things are sort of not really reached normality yet. So you can see we've got lots of low percent. And in fact, if you look at these numbers here, if I zoom in again, this gives you, these numbers here are the ones that are now. So it gives you an idea of the current service provision being run. So Cal Sleeper, I need to work out what's going on with Cal Sleeper. Something's a bit weird with my numbers there. I'll get back to you on that. But, Great Northern's running 75%. I think the key ones are the long-distance services here, running, 75% here for Great Northern, yeah. But then you've got TransPennine running 62%, Avanti West Coast 73%, Cross Country 68%. These are really low percentages, Why? Why on earth are these, why on earth is this happening? Anyway, very strange. So, I'm going to do some Control-Zing and probably undo mid-deletes. There we are. Let's leave that there just in case because I think numbers. Anyway, right, so that's that. Oh, the other thing is you get a nice graph showing there's New Year, right? Yeah, New Year. There's a nice graph showing that you've got, there's the 100% service provision. This is the total, and then you can see the massive drop, and you can sort of see that it climbed, and then it dropped again in the early part. This is a very rough graph. This isn't perfect, by the way. And then the steady climb, and then a bit of a jump, presumably a timetable change. What is that? May 2021? Yeah, timetable change back to kind of around above, in total over 80%. So about 85%. So you can, that kind of ties in. And what I'm going to do is then bring these over into the normal graph in some way. I'll work out how to represent it on there. So that could be interesting. But anyway, there's the data. Thanks to Tom for pulling the kind of outputting the stuff from his system. But kind of interesting. It's very rough. That's a very rough spreadsheet. Don't worry about it too much. So anyway, let's go back to here. So there's the data. Fun data visualization. Oh, so the thing that you might be interested in. Oh, there's some questions. Right, that's okay. There's key questions that are coming up for this. Questions. Oh, remember to @me in if you've got questions so I can see it. There's some love for the spreadsheets. Lovely. Adam Evans noticing. Yes. Don't worry about glitter. Matt Reed, do you still think we'll be back to pre-COVID levels by the end of the year? If not, when do you think we will be? I'm not sure. It's a good question. Let's whiz back. Let me click on here and go back a few. So you can see that there's this. This is the kind of the quote that's given for. Let me get my Wacom back. 75% by the end of the year. Without any further incentives, it's not going to happen. Fares aren't any cheaper. The service provision has not reached 100% yet. Be interesting to see what happens when the services bump in December. The timetable is going to change. So if that then results in a bit of a bump, that'd be good. But we've had no incentive to bring people back. Treasury have just been entirely half-arsed in making any effort to bring people back onto railways. So I have to say I'm not optimistic. I think we've reached a bit of a bump stop. I think we might end up kind of sitting at around 60-70% by the end of the year. And if there's another lockdown, even worse. Owen O'Neill asks a good question. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Chris McKenna, why low mileage? I've heard suggested it's because TOCs have to pay money back to DFT for bailout cash. No, I don't think so. They're all basically running as concessions now. I don't think that's the situation. So where are we? Yes, passenger numbers are hefty. in particular services. I'd like to get the overcrowding data, actually. Again, all the data comes in at its highest resolution. The normal data sets are quarterly, which is not that useful. It'd be quite nice if it was weekly. Graham Hareth, absolutely right, abolish the Treasury. Owen O'Neill, is this services timetabled or run? So Tom, I don't know if Tom's in the chat. This is services timetabled. But if there are some lines near you that are doing a lot of short notice cancellations, that's interesting. And it's actually one for Tom to remind me. In fact, if any of you are in the Discord, just at Tom in. Tom's on the Discord server. You can you can ask him yourself, because it's a very good question. We chatted a little bit about this, but it was a bit difficult to manage the cancellations. I'd be interested to know what it is for cancellations. I'll just do it on 1 week. So anyway, yeah, so... Michael C asks, can we overlay the passenger numbers with the service provision? That's my plan. I'll do that for next week, you see. That's kind of what I'm going to do. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, right, so key headlines are that rail usage is at around 70% and service level is between 60 and 95% for different train operating companies. So there you go. Tom is not in the chat. Yeah, well, he's in the Discord, so we can pick him up later. He's probably preoccupied with day job things. So this is service level, but as others have pointed out, this is kind of this is timetabled. So maybe the actual is lower. Perhaps, who knows? But anyway, there we go. Hopefully interesting. Hopefully a little insight. Right, the news. And this is an obvious one, I think, for everyone, but it's the Salisbury rail crash. And I just want to give a bit of a warning that there are going to be some images, as a bit of a content warning, there are going to be some rail crash images in the next couple of slides. Oh, yes, so, and I'm willing to talk about this a bit, but we're at the point where we basically know most of the information we need to know, actually, to be honest. Given the RAIB's releases, it seems like a pretty open and shut case, but they will be going to great detail to investigate. Some of the other stuff that's more interesting around what happened in the immediate aftermath, I think, is maybe worth dwelling on a little bit. But yeah, happy to answer any questions about this. And if it's a question I can't answer, I'll just ignore you. But yeah, do chuck some questions. But before we do that, Mary Bradley has just asked a question. Mary Bradley, Gareth, do you think the money from the budget that went towards subsidising domestic flights should have gone to subsidising rail? Two things to this one. I mean, the domestic flight subsidy is nonsense and ridiculous and bonkers, but it doesn't have to. Finances don't necessarily have to work like a back and forth of what pays for move one thing to another thing. We can do lots of things all at once. So kind of yes, but also. It doesn't necessarily work like that. So you can, you can pay for multiple. You can decide to pay for other things. Any choices about spending are political, not economic. In terms of whether you can or cannot spend something, it's not an economic choice; it's a political choice. Anyway, right. So Salisbury, right. So content warning. So here's one of the images that kind of doesn't. It's not too horrendous, but it's from the evening, and it's absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific crash. Particular, thoughts have to go out to the driver of the Southwestern Railways train, because they are, they have, if the official statement made clear that they've suffered serious injuries, absolutely serious and potentially life-changing injuries as a result of this crash, and that's a driver who, if the RAIB statement is absolutely correct, that's a driver who very much was a passenger. At the point where they were applying their brakes. So what happened in this crash? It's probably best to put Google Earth up to explain what's happened, actually. So, yes, let me just do this and this and this. Yes. Well, actually, to be honest, the first thing is I've got a slide is to put this up. So, yes, so here is an overhead showing down here. Let me get my... Down here is, so you can see I've just circled it in red. This is the approach signal for the Southwestern train service going along here. Now you might notice, and I've just highlighted it all in red, which is impossible to see for people who are colorblind, so I'm going to fix that. Let me just change this to yellow. There we go. It's all this stuff here. Yeah, all this stuff. And actually this stuff continues this way as well. Yes, this is, and here as well. All this stuff This is all trees. And what do these trees have on them? They have leaves on them. And it is an incredibly common problem for our railway that we have adhesion problems as a result of leaf fall. We're a very leafy country, and as a result of that, we have, as a result of being a very green, leafy country, we have a serious challenge from leaf fall on the railways. This is another reason why lots of these trees, these shouldn't be here. They just shouldn't be here. We can, and it's not a case of turn all of the railway into a desert. There is a space for managed vegetation, but by and large, certainly in critical braking areas, these should be gone. They're gone. Just get rid of them. Absolutely get rid of them. And I'm hoping, as a result of this incident, these will all be kiboshed. Likewise, these, just get rid of them all. This is a critical junction, and what's happened is, so up here you can see there's a nice approach here. This is the Great Western train was coming up here, and then coming up behind and supposed to stop at this junction, this signal down here, was the Great Western service. What then happened, if I get my Google Earth up, is that this is the same image-ish you can see here. This is the layout, by the way. If I go back here, this gives you an idea where Salisbury is, if you want to know get your bearings. Salisbury Station is down here. The tunnel is here. You can see the tunnel where the incident was. The Great Western service was coming up here. Anyway, Simon, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, and I'll answer the questions that are coming through in a sec. So this is where the South Western service was coming, and the South Western service should have stopped at a signal about here. The Great Western service was making its way through. The South Western service, on approach to signal, the driver will have applied the brake and proceeded to not stop at all. And a full wheel lockup, and essentially just slid with all the momentum that a multiple 100-ton train will have along a low friction rail, proceeded to then collide with fairly blunt impact, collide with the Great Western service here, and you can see what's happened. This is the driver was trapped for a long time and has been seriously injured. This is a driver who is a passenger very much in this incident. So Graham Harris has answered excellently about the ABS thing. ABS is useless if you've hit a patch of ice or oil on the road. It's exactly the same result. Trains have lots of sophisticated traction devices. But the thing... So right, let me go back through and answer some of these questions. Let's see. Yes, Adam Evans. Do the trains involved have some form of ABS? If not, would it have prevented this? So yeah, Graham's answered that perfectly. No. What we do have are a series of trains. Actually, I probably should have put a picture up of them. We've got the railhead treatment trains. We've got quite a large range of different vehicles that run around the network, the rail network, jetting the head of the rail and applying sandite to get rid of the leaf mulch. The leaf stuff forms a very thin... let's get Big Face up. Let's very briefly... hello, everyone. It's me, looking haggard. So when you get the leaf fall, it forms a very thin kind of... actually a very effective lubricant on the head of the rail, because there's a very high pressure between the wheel and the rail, and that essentially pulverizes the leaf mulch mixed with moisture into a very effective lubricant. And the only way you can really get rid of this is by jetting the railhead and then applying sandite, which is a sort of a sandy sort of mixture that kind of attacks and gets rid of that leaf mulch. And we just have to run around the network with lots of trains doing this the whole time through leaf season. There's no other way. Devegetation is the other way, managing the asset. But just look at this picture. Go back to this picture here. Look at all this. Look at this. Look at it all. Huge amounts of vegetation all overhanging the railway. This is not good. And once again we come to the fact that we have a railway that is suffering with budget cuts and kind of ill-advised and falsely applied constraints to funding. And it's meaning that things like vegetation management take a back seat. You look across the network and there's always the pictures coming out in summer of railways being inundated by vegetation. Veg management is critical, and we're just not on top of it. And we're doing, the Network Rail are doing their best to keep on top of it, but they are not funded, and we're not staffed sufficiently, and we don't have enough access to get on and manage vegetation in the way that we should. Gareth Williams asked, do other countries have a similar problem with leaves? Yes, they do. They do indeed. Where they are leafy, they have the same problems. Let's go down. What else have we got? the Kai AD, do you think this incident will go anyway to convince those people that pointlessly complain about the possibility of line-side trees being removed? I don't know. I don't think the people who just campaign, like, ultimately, I don't like it when we chop down trees. Trees are nice and good and have lots of benefits. But also we need to have a resilient railway system and safe railway system in order to tackle climate change, as we're going to talk about later. So, yes, we need to deal with trees. Jake Welsh. Oh, wait a minute, sorry. David Shepard asks, is it possible for a crash train to automatically send out a stop alarm? Well, multiple things about this. Firstly, yes, drivers, when they derail, they can hit a device on the dashboard of the train that's basically a big red button that sends out a radio signal across GSMR, and all the other trains in the area stop. Simple. And the signalling system, if you've got a train off, the signals, while that train was still in block, all the signals would be red anyway. So, if a train is kind of crashed and blocking other lines, you'd get an interruption to track circuits generally. But yeah, the first thing the driver will do if they're okay, so the driver of the Great Western train did this, they bashed the big red button that puts the stop signal out everywhere. Jake Welsh asks, will this crash damage confidence in rail travel, which will harm passenger numbers and therefore investment in rail? There's quite a lot to unpick in that question. Crashes always damage confidence in rail travel. Unfortunately, we've seasoned ourselves, and I gave this answer in an interview on Radio Wiltshire the other day. We're used to, and sadly have entirely normalised, 2,000 people being killed on our roads every year, and 25,000 being with life-changing injuries or being killed. Those are huge numbers. We've just entirely normalised that. On the railway, we have, single-figure fatalities, or no rail crash fatalities. We had Stonehaven recently, of course, and then fatalities as a result of kind of injuries at platforms we do get every now and then. We have single figures of fatalities, and we have very small numbers of injuries on the railway. But these, unfortunately, because we've normalised ourselves to road accidents, we see rail crashes and get very scared of them. But they never seem to have a huge impact on ridership, to be honest. So historically, the things that hit ridership are more the engineering aftermath. So Hatfield, for example, it was all the speed restrictions and rail renewals that hit numbers more than people's confidence in rail. As for passenger numbers and investment, well, passenger numbers and investment, you should invest more for more to get. If you've got low passenger numbers, you need to invest more to get more passenger numbers. Of course, Treasury doesn't see it like that. James P. Steve Mould has an excellent video on leaf mulch and its lubrication properties. Thanks for that, James P. Mondoman712 says, but the Woodlands Trust told me that these trees are much more important than those being removed for road building. Well, indeed. Let's see. Dave asked, do you think the RAIB may recommend in-cab signalling improvements across the network due to this? No, I don't think so. It wouldn't make any difference in this circumstance. SciGuy16, do you know how the crashworthiness of the 159s compares to other units? It's pretty good, actually. They're fairly new. They don't have the, they're not as safe as the post-mid to late 90s units that, like the Pendolino. They don't incorporate those crashworthiness features, but they are pretty crashworthy vehicles. These they are much safer than sort of, for example, Mark III based stock. What else? All our fleet has wheel slip protection and sanding. Generally above 50% brake applications, the sanding happens automatically. Thanks, Stuart Aslett. That's very useful. There we go. So, Salisbury train crash. So that's all the leaf stuff. I'm going to put this picture up. I should have pre-warned, but it's a very small, very low resolution picture. But I think I didn't want to put lots of gratuitous picture up, but this one particular, I think it just indicates the energy that's involved in this collision, and also the circumstances for the driver. Really horrible, absolutely horrible, and all happening within a tunnel as well. Talking of which, don't leak logs. This should actually be a thing that appears. Let me appear. There we go. Let me just hide that. Right, so, yes, this is a graphic that's bollocks. Let me just, just in case. This is rubbish. This is a graphic that was produced by everyone's favourite Daily Hate Mail following the incident. Based on nothing. Entirely fictional, made-up sequence of events. Talking about the fact the train hit something, derails, people are trapped for 7 minutes inside. Like, what? Travels toward passing a signal that indicates the route ahead is safe. So all of this This is all. So this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. SWR's train slams into rear of derail. Well, no, it's not derail, but this is at least kind of partially correct. Flips and falls onto its side, sliding alongside its arm. Well, that's kind of all right. That's kind of correct. And then there's obviously that's fine. So this is all absolute rot. And yes, media places shouldn't have jumped on and kind of contrived all this stuff. Yes, even in an interview, I re-listened, and I was glad that I was careful with my wording, and I didn't say, when the train hit something. I was saying, well, we don't know if it's hit something. So I'm reassured by my own wording when I came back to it. But this has all come, all this rubbish of people kind of repeating kind of this nonsense, all came about because of the leaked log that came out on the night. Someone within Network Rail leaking a log to the media. Now, it is the case that logs go around kind of some of the rail press perhaps get access to some of these. But if that happens, it's always on the understanding that they do not publish anything that's in a log that is not in a public statement. So the logs are maybe, people, at the higher up end of the industry, kind of the industry press, the railway press, and kind of other people in the rail industry see some of these logs. So they do, to an extent, these logs do the rounds. And I don't think it's unreasonable that happens, because that allows some of the people who are in the know and well informed, who know how to treat that sort of information, it helps them kind of maybe keep up to date with things, and it allows them to be careful with what they're answering and steer around. So, people like Nigel Harris will see logs. And I don't think it's unreasonable that people like Nigel Harris will see logs, because the rail press understands that unless it is a public statement, those logs are up for alteration. They might not be correct. And indeed, in the case of the log that did the rounds, that log was completely wrong. It was just not right. And that's fine. It's not the fault of the person who put the log together that's wrong. They've gained information they can, probably from a complicated picture of messages and phone calls coming through to the signalling centre. They have then put that in a log, which has then gone out. The mistake was made where someone decided to share that with the sorts of people who write for the Daily Mail, and generally shared it with the wider press and the wider media, who don't understand the content. All they see is a document that looks official, looks ostensibly official, and therefore they consider it to be read. They consider it to be, an official statement, when of course it isn't, because only the official statements have the absolutely certain information on them. And so my message to anyone who's who shared this is, don't leak logs. For God's sake, if you're out there, do not leak logs. Share them with people who you feel, likelihood is they ain't getting shared to anyone anymore, because there'll be a massive clampdown. So, but do not leak logs, for goodness sake, because the misinformation, the worry, the fact that there was information that the driver was okay going around, when in fact the driver was certainly not. There's all this stuff about the signalling system not functioning, like this stuff that knocks confidence in the railways, in the way that the system works, and gets a lot of people confused. The idea that people are trapped inside the train, this stuff, which is, people weren't trapped for 7 minutes before the second crash. They were trapped after the crash. This was after the crash happened. It's all this confused mess. Just don't leak logs, folks. So while that's there, let me have a look back through some of the questions going through here. Matt Reed's asking what the speed the trains are travelling at. No, we don't know yet. We don't know. Actually, I don't know if the latest had it, but kind of, yeah, we don't know exactly yet. Yes, exactly. Untrained, ignorant people reading a log item, Simon, exactly. That leak should never have happened. Completely unethical. Yeah, fully agree, Chris. It was totally unacceptable. Yes. Yep, as Simon points out, Simon, who deals with logs and sees these things, absolutely, early log entries have very little information and get edited with corrections quickly. Absolutely, they do, and it's quite right. It's not, the fault is not that the log was wrong. The log is a live document, and everyone in kind of within the industry understands that those documents are not to be taken as being accurate or correct information, because they're just a representation of the understanding at that pinpoint in time. What's David Shepherd? Who I can't see who you're referring to, because yes, there we are. So right, Anyway, right, enough of that. So, right, enough. Sorry, I'm waffling because I'm trying to catch up the questions. Let's go through the rest of the news. COP26. COP26 is happening. So that's why some of you might be here. Hello to people who are here to RailNatter for the first time, thinking about COP26. The big news from COP26 is that bicycles and trains don't exist. Basically, no mention of bicycles or trains. It's all about cars, which is great, isn't it? Really, really great. Everything's great. Great. Oh, so we're going to talk about it in tonight's episode. And I'm going to make my face reappear. But while I have a sip of coffee, and while you all kind of collect up your thoughts and think about questions to ask, because it's going to be an open session, it's going to be back to the RailNatter roots. It only remains for me to say welcome to tonight's RailNatter, everyone. And as the Intercity 225 fades away, I'm going to put these up. Hopefully some of you know what these are, actually. Who recognises these? You should all recognise these. These are... I've put these up before in RailNatter. These are Hawkins's warming stripes. And I put them up... There's a slightly different way to visualise them, which I'm going to put up now. And it's these. It's the... it's this... This is... You can see here. This is the average global temperature, or temperature anomaly, from 1850 to 2020. And you can see that global temperatures have increased by over 1.2 degrees since 1850. And you might think, oh, 1.2 degrees, that's not much. That's not much at all. Well, as it happens, 1.2 degrees is... Let's get my miniaturized face up. Let's go. Here's my face. Hello, I'm in the corner. If you imagine the atmosphere is like a lava lamp, and if you turn the volume up under that lava lamp, turn the temperature up, everything starts bubbling around more chaotically, and so you get more kind of chaotic extreme weather events. And that is what has been happening in Britain, and indeed across the world, amongst all the other problems with the climate increasing. And before anyone queries this, because I did have a couple of people when I presented some of these slides in Carlisle, some people came and afterwards were kind of raising the fact that they don't believe that. They're like, oh, there's no scientific consensus over whether this is as a result of human activity. Let me just point out, there is 100% scientific consensus over climate change being impacted by human activity. 100% scientific consensus, right? There may be one or two loonies like Piers Corbyn who don't believe so, but rounded, it's 100% consensus. So let's not even try and drag us back to 20, 30 years ago of climate denialism. No, we're responsible for this, and for the most part, it's carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, so equivalent carbon emissions, so things like methane as well. But and what does this mean? So I think I've put these pictures up before. So climate is the definition of climate is a 30-year rolling average of weather. And so that means that if you're altering the climate, that means that you're conversely going to get an impact on weather. And so, as you can see here, here are some nice images of extremes of rainfall, of temperature. Let me go down here and grab this and make it red again, because red's an easier color. So this one here is where are we? There we are. This one is rainfall. You can see some extremes of rainfall here in Cumbria. This one is extremes of temperature. Massive 2-degree anomaly through summer 2018. It was a hot one, wasn't it? And then this one is droughts. This is May 2020, and the lack of rainfall. And actually, it's the extremes of both lots of rainfall and lack of rainfall that are really bad for earthworks, amongst other things. As Graham Harris is pointing out, methane, CO2, and CFCs as well. So, so this manifests itself in, and indeed recently we've seen this at the start of the week, over the weekend. Cockermouth and Annan had two of its bridges, beautiful bridges, swept away by the extreme rain. Cockermouth has seen this all before, of course. But yeah, Cumbria is flooding just only recently, so this is happening now. It's impacting on us absolutely now. And indeed, yeah, this is kind of topical because I basically filched my slides, the climate change slides I was using over the weekend up in Carlisle, talking to the campaign for Board's Rail, which was nice. I'll do a RailNatter on that presentation because I think it's kind of maybe some of you wanted to see it. But yeah, this is Eden Valley and the railway getting washed away by the extremes of rainfall. If you remember this, weather versus railways with Alex Priestley, we went through all this stuff. So here's the railway kind of going, the side of the slope disappearing off and taking the railway with it. And there's the rainfall for that. So that's all the good stuff. And also, there are more catastrophic impacts, of course. So, I mean, everyone watching this should know about Carmen. You know, there's a washout of a drainage system. We're waiting for the final report. The sooner it comes out, the better. Washout of a drainage system which derailed an HST, which then crashed and tragically killed 3 people. You know, really catastrophic derailment. And you can, so that was as a result of, you know, that was as a result of not really, it was not just the extreme rainfall event that happened there. It was as a result of extreme rainfall events happening around the whole of Scotland all at once. It was as much a breakdown in communications as anything else, as we kind of talked about in the Carmen episode. Breakdown in communications as a result of all these extreme events happening all at once. Hello to those who were at the CBR event. Yeah, nice to see you. So, what are we doing about it? So, any of you who are at that event will recognise these slides because I've just dragged them straight over. So here, and some, hopefully lots of you will recognise this. So, some successes in the UK, right? Energy. We've reduced energy greenhouse gas emissions by 60%. 50% for industry, 40% for business. Residential is a bit more rubbish. And if I hide my face, let me just get rid of my face temporarily. You know, residential is a bit more rubbish. So yeah, Insulate Britain. They do know what they're talking about. This like, yeah, Insulate Britain. But also transport. Transport is the one that's missing, and this 3% is actually being too kind because it does not include international flights or international shipping. So actually, I think the figure for this is like -2% if you include those. So transport emissions have got worse through my lifetime. So just rubbish. So we've solved the thing is this is easy. This is easy. This is pretty easy. Business, pretty easy. These are all easy things. Easy. Things that are hard are all of our rubbish houses in Britain. Houses. And then transport, because it involves behaviour. And investment. Boo. These are bad things, according to Treasury. So, hence why these have not been solved. And the reason for this, all of you should be familiar with this, right? The reason for this is because of transport modal share. So we have 1.1% of people and things move around in the UK by air, 10% by rail, and nearly 90% by road. These are the problems. These are the challenges. So Gareth, you're asking how many years each of these bars represents. These are 1990 to today-ish. Actually, it's to 2018. I need to go and update the numbers, but it's basically the same. Not much improvement, really. Things have stabilised because, you know, this government is particularly useless and Britain's been in crisis mode since 2016. So, yeah, that's reduction emissions throughout my entire lifetime. Anyway, modal share. And so this is the graph that I always put up when people talk about railway decarbonisation. Railways, yes, we should be decarbonising, but it's the reason we need to be doing things like electrification isn't because of decarbonisation. Because if I snap my fingers overnight, I've made my face go away. I'll bring my face back shortly. Don't worry. If I snap my fingers overnight, 3.6 million tons of CO2 would be saved annually. Which is I'm changing these graphics actually to do a representation of exactly how much of an overall UK percentage that represents. But as a relative scale, if I instead shifted 10% of people from air and road into rail, that would represent nearly 3 times that saving, 9.5 million tons of CO2 equivalent, which is a tremendous reduction in CO2. So that, you know, this is decarbonisation, decarb. And this is modal shift, and this is why electrification is important because of this one. It's because of this one, not because of this one. decarbonisation is a useful side effect of electrification, but electrification allows us to run a better railway, which means we can move more people and things around. So that's the critical thing here. Out of curiosity, or rather out of interest, the fuel duty freeze has had its own impact as well, which is the impact of fuel duty. This is per year, by the way, so this is savings per year. The annual, this isn't a saving, this is how much is being burned by the fuel duty freeze. So this 10 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent that we'd save a year as a result of this modal shift is being almost entirely cancelled out, and then the same again by the fuel duty freeze. So this indicates how critical policy is for making a difference to carbon emissions. That's another 18 million tonnes of CO2 being released this year, and more as a result of fuel duty being frozen yet again. Absolutely catastrophic. Honestly incredible. So the key thing is that 10% modal shift. If we go back to the modal shift diagram, okay, so 10% reduction in road actually means a 10% increase, an overall increase of rail by 100% almost. So it's almost a doubling to drive that modal shift which means that's where that's where you come up with the need for Britain's railways to double their capacity by 2050. And it's not just me making it up. This is the Centre for Alternative Technology. The Green Party actually have their policy actually says that they need to increase rail's capacity by between 50 and 100%, which shows how stupid their anti-HS2 policy is. This is the key quote. Britain's railways need to double their capacity by 2050 to enable modal shift from road to rail. And to do that requires multiple things to be happening. And okay, this is an infrastructure focus. Yes, we also need to do ticketing. We need integrated better. We need reduced fares. But actually, reduced fares can only really happen when we increase capacity. And to increase capacity, fundamentally, we need more steel and more trains, because we also have a shortage of trains in this country. The Roscoes will never release, they will never buy more trains than they can ever lease in a given moment, which is a problem because it means that we have an inflexible system. So here's Manchester being renewed. So we need massive existing network upgrades need to happen. These don't disappear. We need these to happen to increase capacity. We also need to build railway lines, kind of small railway lines serving local communities. We need more new local railways being built, kind of regional railways being built. This is borders, of course. We need more of these to happen. But of course, we also need new major high-speed railway lines in order for us to grow capacity in a massive way. Step-changing capacity by releasing space on the existing railway network. That's the key stuff. But all that discussion, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that, and this is an excellent, if depressing piece published in Rail Business UK, go find it, pointing out that lots of industry insiders, including myself, do vigorously believe that Treasury have absolutely no interest in growing rail capacity. In fact, they intend to contract the industry right at the point where we need it to be growing. Frightening, absolutely frightening. So, Q&A time. It's back. It's a traditional Q&A, folks. It's my big face. Hello. Oh, I need to get a little doodad down here for big face, don't I? Like a little RailNatter thingy. I don't know, because at the moment it's just a screen with nothing in it. I should maybe step up on the graphics front. Anyway, right. How about that? Let's go down up here. So, right, questions. Uncritical Simon. Are buses coaches greener than rail travel per passenger kilometre? Because I've heard this be asserted, particularly for a full coach. It can be over certain distances, but it depends on all sorts. And, you give e-buses and things. So, yeah, but the point is that they achieve different things. And it's not just about pure carbon emission savings per passenger. It's about how many people you're getting off the road, which means that the bigger picture is you've got to have the permanence and the capacity and the speed that rail provides. And also, as Pete Johnson, if Pete's in here, Pedro J UK on Twitter, can point out a lot of those carbon emissions in transport as a result of long distance long distance journeys and freight, not the short journeys that can be done by walking and cycling and should be anyway, and e-bikes and e-scooters and all these good things. Dave asked, does that include Northern Ireland or Republic of Ireland, just the island, but it's just GB. Those are just GB stats. The mode shift is GB stats, not Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is kind of excluded from that, yeah. Adam Evans, I'm a bit of a petrol head, but when visiting a city with proper rapid transit system, country with great rail, I've asked for tube, train to cars. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a petrol head too, but I don't like, most journeys are far better not by car. Like, I will always choose to travel by train if I can, because it's more pleasant, it's just nicer. And also in cities, everything works better. The thing that makes the city the nicest is when you're in a city and there are no cars in it, and it's empty and it's peaceful and there's nice public transport digging its way through. It's just nice. Cities are for people, not for cars. How much would it cost to decarbonise rail? Also, how long would it take? Matt Reed, I refer you to the TDNS episode, because we quote both those in that episode. Where are we? Off we got. Dave, how do these modal figures compare to some of our direct peers like France, Germany, Italy, etc.? Switzerland has quite substantially higher mode share for rail. I think it's 30%. But it would be interesting to have a comparison, wouldn't it? Yeah, I haven't actually got the data to compare. I shall make a point of, probably in the Discord, I shall make a point of making the comparison. David Shepherd says, isn't doubling the capacity of the rail network a bit of a small ambition? No, because if you have 50 to 100% more rail capacity combined with a reduction in overall journeys, that can achieve net zero. That can achieve the level of carbon reduction we need. It's, doubling rail capacity by 2050 it involves a lot of physical work to be done. I mean, this is the decade that it needs to happen in, not the 2030s, not the 2040s, the 2020s. And yet everything's being pushed back as far as possible by Treasury. Where are we? Right. Memnonia. It's difficult to engage with these numbers without falling victim to climate grief. Yeah, that is true. Basically, all people who care about this stuff are in a state of perpetual sort of trauma as a result of the lack of action by people. I should have put that picture. I should have put that picture in RailNatter. That picture with the blinking leaders of the country wishing themselves luck by chucking a penny over their shoulder into that fountain in Rome. It's like, no, you are literally in charge of everything. You're in charge. Make the change happen. No, the buck stops with no one else. It's you guys. Oh my goodness, absolutely hateful scenes. Vile. Oh, it makes me so angry. O'Neill suggests we should all try to get jobs in the Treasury and become double agents. That'd be nice. David Shepherd, how much high-speed rail can we actually build by 2050, given unlimited investment? Not much more than we're currently investing in, because without the guarantee without the long-term pipeline of saying, yeah, actually we're going to do this, the supply chain will never grow and we'll never be able to deliver more. Matt Reed asks, if the government are truly bothered about being net zero, why on earth aren't they electrifying East-West Rail? Oh, because they don't care. They just don't care. Dave, considering the UK voting history, how do we convince the public in the needs for massive infrastructure projects and to ditch the cars? Well, there's kind of two issues there. UK voting history is that we generally vote Tory. That's pretty much the baseline. And the Conservative Party aren't hugely interested in massive infrastructure projects. They're interested in occasionally saying they're going to do them, but then when it comes to actually making them happen, they have a pretty poor track record. Yes. So, Tom, is there a way to rapidly reintroduce good electric trams across cities, even if they're a bit gadget banish? Again, government needs to fund them. The way to make them appear is for government to fund them. The issue is, we could build these things pretty quickly. Trams are pretty rapid to roll out if the funding's there. These tram projects are good because they can happen within a few years. The funding needs to be there. And government is obsessed with making competitions and delaying and not investing. Graham Harth just simply has commented, low traffic neighborhoods. Yeah, absolutely. We need to be kind of gentrifying as many of our cities as we possibly can. Nicholas Marshall, what do you think about the BBC message saying electric cars are better than public transport? It was based on a very bad bit of science. Or actually, no, it wasn't. They misquoted a not particularly good bit of paper, although the authors sort of were clear that they shouldn't have, that the BBC article misused the data. But it's just, unfortunately, it's because the BBC now, I love the BBC, but the BBC now is much more taking on the role of an actual state broadcaster than a public service broadcaster, because of the fact that the Tories, since 2010, David Cameron started it, and they've just saturated that organisation with their minions. And as a result, it has resulted, and there are still good people within the BBC. BBC News, has a lot of good people still in it, working at both an editorial and a journalist correspondent level. But this groupthink, the idea that the idea they're having to repeat they are essentially repeating government lines on a lot of things, and the electric car thing is absolutely one of them. But unfortunately, it's also a thing that a lot of tech journalists do. Tech journalists are obsessed with EVs entirely at the expense of the better solutions, which are all the ones we already have. Right, there we are. Jermaine, hello, I'm fine. Yeah, don't worry, Jermaine, I'm all right. And secondly, do you think any sort of progress was made in decarbonising rail in COP26? None at all. But as we said, decarbonising rail isn't so important. It's decarbonising transport that's critical. Decarbonising rail is frankly not that important. The thing that is important is not to decarbonise rail. It is to make the railway run better. And that's another reason why all these alternative solutions are not great, because they aren't necessarily providing the benefits that electrification does. Like the reason why you electrify railways is not to decarbonise them. It's to make them better so that you can move more people and things by rail. You can have faster, better accelerating, higher capacity trains, lighter trains, all these things. Chris Varga Findlitter, pronounced your name terribly, I'm so sorry. The government need to better engage with industry leaders. This problem is true across manufacturing and energy too. The apathy of the government is extremely frustrating. Absolutely it is, yeah. Mary Bradley is asking how quickly we could electrify the network if we started now. Would we meet the target 2050? We could. Again, I'd recommend going to the Traction Decarbonisation Network Strategy episode of RailNatter, which you'll find if you trace back. If you search RailNatter TDNS, it should appear, and the data is in there for how long it can be done, how quickly it can be done. There are two options: one for 2040 and one for 2050. Of electrifying, as much of the network that can sensibly be electrified, which is 86% of it, by the way. Yes, so it can be done, but it needs to start now. We needed to start 3 years ago, really, but we certainly need to start 2 years ago. The Traction Decarbonisation Network Strategy has disappeared, by the way. The interim was released, and the final version has been killed. I don't think that'll ever see the light of day. Absolutely criminal, horrific. This government are absolutely despicable, honestly despicable. Matteo asked about trolley buses. Yeah, I'm all for trolley buses, but e-buses are fine and normal buses are fine too. Like these are fine. The issue with buses is that actually need to get all the cars out of the way. So more bus lanes is probably more important than installing trolley buses. Gareth Williams, when I lived in Liverpool back in 97 to 01, a small fortune was spent consulting on reintroduction of trams. Nothing was done. Yeah, that's because a small fortune, the trouble with a small fortune is it's easy to spend a small fortune, it's difficult to spend a large fortune. And government, when it comes to the actual money to invest in these things, Treasury aren't interested, are they? Hence why the small money gets spent to make it look like it's going to happen, because you can pay the consultants and do lots of more analysis. Hello, as a rail consultant, I wave. Pineapple Man 3, do you think that rail freight operators will try to electrify the lines to ports and increase capacity if they put the money in themselves like Chiltern Railways? The freight operators are just not interested in that. They don't have the cash. They don't have the cash flow to be able to do that. They don't have the liquidity. They don't have that sort of that level of capital. The idea that there's limited interest from any private investors to do any sort of heavy infrastructure stuff. And much as government constantly talks about it as if it's a realistic thing, it isn't. It never happens. And government just needs to get on and invest itself. Those lines do need electrifying, of course. What are some positive things coming out of COP26 and the budget retransport? Thanks, Dave. That's a good question. Ryan Hogg, should we focus on hubs around existing transport arteries? Thinking Alnwick, Alnmouth could potentially be a quick win. Yeah, absolutely. Those sorts of things. We need to have integrated. There are some good examples in Cornwall, actually, of good bus and rail hubs that work really nicely in a rural setting. Really, really good work. The examples exist. Would swapping out Euroshuttle trains for trains with cargo containers lower our carbon footprint? Le Shuttle is a bit rubbish and eats a lot of capacity and arguably continues to induce demand on either side of the channel. So I would be all right with us chopping it up, actually, and just basically scrapping the shuttle and carrying everything that goes through the shuttle on container trains. I'd be happy with that. Chris Bird, with the following wind, the West Midlands Metro will be reopening the city centre section, plus Wolverhampton Station and Five Ways Hagley Road extensions very shortly. That'll be good. COP26 doesn't cover microparticulates that are often produced as an FF byproduct and a fossil fuel byproduct, and a minimal impact on the climate, but deadly for people. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, don't get me wrong. The climate crisis, carbon emissions is only one facet of the wider kind of ecological calamity that we're inflicting on ourselves, as well as all the health kind of disbenefits. Hundreds of thousands of people are impacted by poor quality air globally. Millions, in fact, and EVs don't solve a lot of the problems related to cars. EVs solve maybe one of the problems related to cars, but they actually make some of the particulate problems worse. There'll be more plastic. Car tires are the single largest source of particulate plastic, of kind of plastic bits in the world. In the ocean plastic, most of that is car tires. It is, it's cars are problematic. EVs don't solve most of the problems related to cars. Where are we? Let's see. Where are we? Oh yeah, that Adam Evans. That exchange with the Carlo guy. Yeah, he emailed me. I did have no intention of engaging with him. Sorry. He's suffering from groupthink. He's choosing data. He's decided what he wants to believe. I'm just not interested. Even smart people can be deluded by some fact. Con cars cheap. Yeah, he's just not interested in what you have to say. What would be my biggest impact? Dave asked what my biggest impact list for railways would be to aid climate goals. HS2, Northern Powerhouse Rail, extension of HS2 up to Glasgow, and extension of another high-speed line down to a new Severn Tunnel, then splitting towards South Wales and Bristol. Those would be my big ticket items, but below that, I would say electrification is critical because it allows us to run a better railway. We also need to build a lot more trains. Those are the key things I'd shout about. Matt Reed, will any government do what's needed? I feel whatever colour is in won't do what's needed. No, I don't think they will. It's very depressing, isn't it? I honestly don't think they will. But we have to. That doesn't mean we have to stop trying and pushing hard to make it happen. Hazzles asks, do we need to sort out rail electricity charges to stop rail companies swapping to diesel traction under the wires? Yes, we definitely should. Michael C says, Ella's convinced me regarding Le Shuttle. Yeah, probably, yeah. David Shepard asks, should the government offer a scheme where people trade in cars for free rail passes? That'd be nice. We should offer things like what they have in Austria, where they have you pay a single figure, and it, by the way, should be a lot cheaper than an overall season ticket, and you just have access to all public transport in the country. That would be incredibly powerful. Do that, and you would drive a lot of modal shift. The trouble is, our buses are crap in this country because of deregulation, and the rail network is, we will be struggling with capacity fairly soon again. Well, it's Simon, who was it? Who was talking? It was John Stone actually talking about the fact that even with rail running at 70%, that's where rail was in 2008, 2009. So we've only lost about 10 years of growth. The railways are still full, folks, as a lot of people experience when they're travelling at the moment. Oh, how about a low-cost single-class service, aka Lumo, through the Channel Tunnel to tackle short-haul flights? That'd be nice. Yeah, Eurostar. A lot of good people at Eurostar. A lot of others who've left because of this government not funding it. But Eurostar is not a great train operator, frankly. We should all try. I love travelling by Eurostar, but there are lots of things they do a really bad job of. I'd quite like more services to be run through Eurostar, through Eurotunnel, actually, to actually do a bit of competition. I don't care whether it's private or public, but a bit of competition through the channel would be a good thing, I think. Right, okay. Let's go back to Smallface again. There's some Q&A stuff. We've had an hour. I said it was going to be a short episode. We've done some chatter, some discussions. There's some more questions coming in. Chuck them in the Discord or save them up. I'll do more sessions. There's obviously got to be more climate kind of Q&A sessions, and I need to do some more general RailNatter Q&A sessions because there's always interesting questions. Yes. So thanks for everyone for joining. Thanks everyone for dropping in. I know it's a bit of an ad hoc episode, but hopefully interesting. It's been a pleasure to have you along. Let's whiz on and talk about what's happening next. So, all right, okay. So audio only people aren't hearing this. Work got in the way. I've got them all downloaded. I just need to upload them now onto Podbean. So it will happen. I'm sorry. It's still back on episode 77. It's nearly going to be 11 episodes behind. It's not great. Lots of good questions coming in now, but I'm not going to see them because I think we're going to have to. I've got fish downstairs that I need to eat, and I'm very hungry. But thanks for all your questions. Store them up, chuck them my way on Twitter. Thanks, everyone. Patreon, Discord, and PayPal. Patreon people, there's new bonuses, which I'm about to tell you about. which is very exciting. And indeed, some of you were getting to watch me do some sort of Patreon-only streaming last night, which is also fun. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, then drop into the Patreon. Patreon.com/GarethDennis. The Discord server is at GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord. You can go in there, and what you can do is do all of the chat that's been happening in the side here. But 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's relentless, and there's a lot of joy in there. And yes, I know the reshuffle of the channels is long overdue, but what can I say? Things always end up overtaking me. PayPal is where you can just chuck me loose change if you fancy it. It's very kind if you do that. And the good thing about PayPal is if you chuck me a bit of loose change, you can leave a little message. And a few people have left a nice message. It's very kind of you. The fact that all the pennies that you give me means that I can justify kind of taking time to do some of this stuff. That's the main reason it happens. Yes, the stuff I do is all fairly cheap. But it allows, yes, it pays for train tickets for me to go and do location natters. But by and large, the thing that the Patreon and the PayPal pay for is the time, the justification of the time. Because obviously there's a bit of a time commitment. And I have a 9-to-5 job, believe it or not. Right, the fun stuff. There are merchandise things to be bought right now. The merchandise is available to be purchased. There are... Oh, in fact, watch this. I'm putting it on. Is it going to work? Oh, crikey. There are face masks like this one. Look, it's a RailNatter face mask. Look at that. And since there's going to be another lockdown this winter, and we should all still be wearing masks. Look at this. There we are. Since you can have, and look, it's got Colton Junction on it. Look, there you are. Colton Junction on it's on my nose. Anyway, yes, so the masks are available to purchase. They're quite reasonable. They're made by Masquette, who make they're really comfortable masks. They fit really nicely, and they make my regional railways mask that I wear all the time. So but my favourite piece of merch by far is this mug a gadget band mug. I'm very pleased with this one. I think it's awesome. I encourage all of you to get the Is This Mug a Gadget Band mug because it's ridiculous and I love it. And if you're a Patreon supporter, you get discount codes. I will send you through the discount codes shortly, but there are discount codes for Patreon people. So if you want a big discount, and it is a hefty discount, by the way, then you can get the merch. And they're only two little things. It's on the website. You can go on the Masquette website. It's on their homepage. You can find it, but I've put a link in the description of this as well. More merch. If you want more merch, make recommendations. Make recommendations of fun merch that you'd like, and I shall add it to the list. It's been fun working with the Masquettes folks to make the mug and the mask happen. The mug, the mask. What's the third M thing we can make? Anyway, discount codes. Yes, I alluded to this last week, but I thought I'd mention it just to kind of reiterate. If you want to vent some frustration, I cannot recommend listening to or indeed being a guest on Trash Future highly enough. Trash Future podcast. If you just search, if you're one of their Patreon subscribers, because it's a paid episode, but you can subscribe and then you can listen to it. And if you enjoyed it, you can keep listening and subscribing, or you can unsubscribe after you've subscribed, as long as you paid 1 month. That's fine. Whatever. They're all lovely at Trash Future. It was a tremendously fun episode to sit in on. So I'd strongly recommend going and having a listen to that, where I get very irate and angry about railways in Britain, and very irate and angry about why things don't happen and why they should happen. So I'd strongly recommend you go and listen to that. It was good fun. Now, next week's episode. Episode 87. The Architecture of the Railways Built 3. It's the 30th episode celebration episode with Tim Dunn. Tim's joining us next week. It's going to be lovely. It's going to be catharsis. Good grief, we need it. Oh, golly, we need it desperately. It's going to be nice, and it should be quite the treat. Something a bit different to the previous two Architecture of the Railways Built episodes, or RailNatter episodes. I'm very excited for this one, not least because it means that Tim and I get to just sort of drink wine and talk about fun things and forget the world and generally enjoy and be happy, because you know what, folks, you need some joy in life. Joy is important. You need to step back from things and gain a bit of joy so that you can have build up the energy for the fight again. So there we are. That's it. Next time, everyone. Thanks so much for dropping in. There's some good questions. Let's see if I can pick up any of the questions that popped in just here. Extension of rail cards, unlimited free public transport, small annual fee. Could the network cope? No, it couldn't. actually read the particular emission paper he offered as a source. His trains are worse than cars. Particular argument. It said nothing of the sort. Best leave him alone. Yeah, agreed. He just doesn't understand. He's just a bad scientist. If anyone doesn't know what we're talking about, there's a guy who was suggesting that cars are less emission. Like he was talking about particulate emissions from trains versus cars. It was just nonsense. Rigor mortis, did you see the graph from David Horn of LNER fame on diesel usage reduction after the 8X introductions? Yes, absolutely. It was a really good graph showing how their consumption of fuel reduced. But of course, and also it'd be interesting to see what their passenger numbers increased as a result of the increased number of seats that those trains provided. Because to be honest, that's the more important thing for greenhouse gas emissions, is reducing how other people travelling other ways. Chris Bird, infill electrification schemes, will they help climate at a fairly modest cost and not too long lead time? Yeah, definitely, particularly for freight. They're alongside major electrification, route electrification. They're only there's a list like 100 list of like very small, a list of 100 very small little electrification schemes that would allow a huge, like 75% of all rail freight to go fully electric. Like, seriously easy stuff. Why aren't super chats here on YT enabled? I don't even know what that is. Sounds fun. How many milliliters is the mug? Good question. No idea. Scarves. It needs to start with them. Mittens. Gregor suggests mittens. That's a very good suggestion. RailNatter mittens sound great. Oh, right. Anyway, enough of that. Like, you've all been lovely. Sorry, it was a bit of it was a shorter, lighter Natter episode. I mean, 10 minutes late already. But anyway, I'm going to go and eat fish. You've all been lovely. Thanks for joining. And I'll see you all soon. See you all next week. Cheerio! Cheerio!